Hello and welcome back, my beauties, to another review from Through the Eyes of Enji, where we're trying to work our way through 101 films in 365 days. And we're doing this in support of We Are With You and the Shortbury Village Players. Now, We Are With You is a confidential service for young people and families affected by drugs and alcohol in Shropshire. Their work includes information, support and advice about drugs and alcohol, one-to-one support, group work, a parent-carer helpline, help to make decisions about lifestyle, links to other services, early intervention, and harm reduction. Now, if we've been friends for a substantial amount of time, you probably would have heard of the Shortbury Village Players. They're a community amateur dramatics group acting out of, unsurprisingly, Shortbury. We'll do all sorts of things. We'll do your murder mysteries, we'll do your Shakespeare, we'll do your historical plays, we'll do pretty much anything you can think of. We'll certainly give it a go. If you've struggled with your mental health in the past like I have, then perhaps you will understand, like me, what an impact it would be on the community to lose something like the Village Players. So, throw me a few quid, give me a recommendation, we'll give a look at a film. We might hate it, we might love it, and sometimes it might make us float on cloud nine. Speaking of which, today we're going to be looking at Dave. Now, Dave was released in 1993, directed by Ivan Reitman and written by Gary Ross. It stars Kevin Kline as Dave Kovic, Kevin Kline as Bill Mitchell, Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Mitchell, Frank Langella as Bob Alexander, Kevin Dunn as Alan Reed, Ving Rhames as Dwayne, and Sir Ben Kingsley as Vice President Nance. Storyline: an uncanny presidential lookalike named Dave is recruited by the Secret Service to become a momentary stand-in for the President of the United States. Right, straight off the bat, Dave's great. Now, I remember when I was talking about Enola Holmes, how it felt light, happy, and almost a classic example of a feel-good film. Dave is exactly like that. Now, it might start off a little grim in the beginning as we're introduced to what a scumbag President Bill Mitchell is, and a very clever moment when he and the First Lady, played by Sigourney Weaver, entered the White House together for the first time, smiling for the cameras, leading their dogs in, only then for Bill Mitchell's public face to just switch off. He tosses the dog leads aside like he couldn't give a shit about them, and both the President and the First Lady split at a T-junction to go their separate ways. Now, this isn't a major plot point in the film, or it's not a setup for a big joke, but it is a classic example of giving us all the information we need as to the nature of their relationship, whilst also leaving the door open for us to find out more about what happened to that relationship, and builds brilliantly into a moment in the film, and this is the only moment in the film I'm actually going to spoil, which is the inevitable part where the First Lady works out that Dave isn't her husband. And it's like most of the best parts of the film, as it's so wonderfully subtle. It makes you slap your forehead for not realising it when it comes up again later in conversation. This isn't just a wonderfully warm-hearted film. It's pretty smart as well. There's nothing new about the entire concept of Dave in an ordinary person gets thrown into a position of power. Just like there's nothing overly new about this ordinary person gets pushed into the position of power and uses their everyday person life skills to fix things that the old fogies in their seats of power wouldn't think to do. Now, there's a few factors here which contribute to this. Possibly the main one is the script by Gary Ross, which is really intelligent and doesn't play to the cheap seats by oversimplifying what's happening in the film. And then secondly, we've got the great Ivan Reitman, who directs fantastic comedy, whilst at the same time enhancing the intelligence of Gary Ross's script and keeping it very subtle in telling us things about the characters in their actions that we don't need dialogue to be described to us to know. Finally, there's Kevin Kline. Now, Kevin Kline has always been marvellous at playing the everyday nice guy. Now, that's not to suggest he can't play other roles as well. I mean, even in this film, when he plays Bill Mitchell, he plays an absolute scumbag. And then there's also things like A Fish Called Wanda. But Kevin Kline is as pitch perfect as Dave Kovic. No one else. That being said, no one else in the cast is, taking a backseat either. Sigourney Weaver is absolutely perfect as this restrained First Lady who's hiding her personal face for nearly the entire film, and yet, at the same time, she's also absolutely terrifying to me, and I would never piss her off as long as I lived. Now, I'm sure Frank Langella could play a hissable panto villain like this in his sleep, but he's so good here as the villain, and he's portraying what I can imagine quite a lot of the inhabitants of the White House staff can be like in real life. I mean, he's no John Spencer in The West Wing, but who is? And then there's just something about Sir Ben Kingsley that just adds grace to a film. And he's not in the film very much, but he's brilliant. Just the way he sits down, the way he holds himself is just fantastic to watch. Now, this guy couldn't even be bad in Thunderbirds, for goodness sake. We'll look at his work in Schindler's List, and that alone lets us forget the fact that he was in The Love Guru. Don't even think about it, Martin. Now, I've said it before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, that comedy is really difficult to review because what some people find funny, others don't. It's more than just the nature of reviewing films. It comes down to personal taste. And as before, therefore, I won't ruin the best jokes here. But I found Dave really funny, really sweet, and it just brightened my day watching it. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the last administration that has now left us, finally. But there's something really satisfying at the moment watching a Frank Capra-style comedy about a Mr. Smith-esque character championing it over the corrupt institute. And there might be something about Dave which makes it more palpable now, more than ever, as we move from a 4-year bad dream into what we hope will be a better time for the United States. And one of Dave's real strengths is it encourages you to suspend your feeling of disbelief, whilst at the same time using real-life politicians of the era and talk show hosts, along with a frighteningly good recreation of the White House interior and lawn to make the film feel authentic. Side note for clarity, this film was produced just before the Clinton administration and was riding on a lot of the feelings in the United States about the political system at that time as Bill Clinton was coming in. And I'm not really sure there's much more to add here. Dave won't set your world on fire, and wow, that was a weird sentence to speak. But it will give you a very pleasant way of going through a couple of hours in an evening. Granted, watching Barbie Princess Charm School, The West Wing, and Aquaman in an evening is very much mixing themes. But in summary, Dave's not going to make your belly laugh like Ivan Reitman's other classic films like Ghostbusters or Kindergarten Cop, and don't make me review Kindergarten Cop again. It's perfect in my dreams and I don't want to ruin that. But Dave will make you come away feeling on a high, making you feel like you, like anyone, could make a difference in high politics if you brought along some of the decency and common sense that I think we could be strongly argued the last administration was somewhat lacking. Oh, bugger, there goes my attempt at not getting political. Anyway, short and sweet today. As I say, there's not a great amount of things to say. Dave's really funny, it's really good, and you should totally watch it. And there's not really many other subjects I can really divert into, unless we're going to look into looking at other political films and how they've covered this sort of subject. And I think if you're going to look at anything like Dave, if you're like me and you come off watching Dave and you want more of the same, you're looking at the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington sort of vibe. If you're looking at if you want something that's lighter but it still has some jokes and comedy in it, but not gags, and yet wants to scratch that itch of watching more dramatised American politics, I always push for The West Wing, because I think House of Cards, unfortunately, has been tarnished by its star now, and watching it might be uncomfortable for some people. Not quite as uncomfortable as watching American Beauty is now. But yeah, there's plenty out there for American politics if that's your source, if that's what you fancy. But I think we can't underestimate the intelligence of Dave. That it is a very clever political film, but is really light-hearted, is a real feel-good film, and is really funny. It's really cheap as well. I got mine for £1. Right, so as I said last time, I am pulling out films outside of the reviews a bit more now, just so I can try and get ahead. So the next review will be up on Sunday, and that's going to be High School Musical 2. And then mid next week, I'm hoping the next review will come out, which is going to be for The Usual Suspects, nominated by Gregor. And then what I'll probably wind up doing is getting Laura to pull out a couple more films tomorrow night, because my Saturdays at the moment seem to be get up, walk, go and do the shopping, watch 2 or 3 films to review. Which, to be honest, isn't a bad way to spend a Saturday at the moment. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Do subscribe to the videos, like it, share it around. Do contemplate giving me a couple of quid, because we're still at the £218 mark and we're not shifting. So maybe dramatic things need to be done. Anyway, thank you very much again for watching, and we'll see you again soon.